National Assembly today considers the contentious appropriation bill. This bill marking a critical stage of the national budget process because Parliament has to decide on how money is allocated to various government departments, and every department's budget has to be approved for the bill to pass. But the budget has been the biggest indicator of some of the cracks in the government of national unity, with the DA now threatening to withhold support from key budget votes. Newzroom Afrika's Valen Kirtley is following these developments for us and joins us now. Valen, I think we've really comprehensively set the scene there. So what's it looking like from where you are, and how is this likely to unfold today? Good morning, by the way.
Good morning, Iman. Thank you so much, and a very good morning to our viewers once again. Yes, it is a budget vote which has helped South Africans understand that it's not just as simple as the finance minister presenting it and then we move forward, but in fact there's some crucial stages, and at those crucial stages we've seen some challenges. But late last night, DA's leader John Steenhuisen says that they will in fact support the appropriations bill following the dismissal of Nobuhle Nkabane, the former Minister of Higher Education and Training. Joining me now from the Democratic Alliance is their finance spokesperson. He's also on the Standing Committee of Finance and in an alternate capacity in the Standing Committee of Appropriations. That's Dr Mark Burke. A very good morning to you. Thanks for chatting to Newzroom Afrika. So the DA is now going to support this appropriations bill, which is the final step of the entire budgetary process. However, Tembi Simelane still remains in her position as Human Settlements Minister.
Absolutely, we are supporting this bill today. We're a responsible partner of this government of national unity. You point out that Tembi Simelane is in a role still. We still consider that tenure to be unsustainable and that she has to go. But I would point out that this is the first time in 31 years that the ANC has taken instruction from another party to get rid of a clearly corrupt minister, somebody who has very recently lied to Parliament and done so blatantly. So we are satisfied at this point that Nkabane being removed from her post is sufficient for us to be able to move forward with this budget. We look forward to making sure that we implement disciplined fiscal policy in years ahead, and that we keep our executive accountable, that we keep people at the head of organizations who can be trusted to lead and to restore trust in government. And the DA is quite pleased with the progress to date.
Why stop now? It's been such a long, drawn-out process with a number of challenges along the way. The issue of those ministers which the DA says were compromised in key areas, that also was during the process. So why stop now?
It's a great question, and we don't want to try and spin it too much. We would have preferred for Simelane to also be removed from her post. But the fact of the matter is we're now 5 months into this budgeting process. We've had a number of concessions extracted in this process. South Africans are also asking, especially those working for the state, is my tenure safe? Should I stay on in the public sector serving society? Or should I go look for an opportunity in the private sector where I'm not threatened with not having a salary next month? So at some level, we have to ask ourselves, if we're in government, are we willing to fund government departments so that teachers, nurses, policemen can get paid? And so the answer then to your question is why stop now? Is so that these people can get paid and that government can continue functioning.
Do you believe that the DA has been responsible with all of these challenges? Because we have been able to go over the last 3 months on the back of the PFMA, which is how we've been able to kind of lean on last year's budget allocations. But has it been responsible from a fiscal point of view?
Absolutely. Every move we've taken has been a measured approach to how we make sure that this government is more accountable than ANC-dominated governments in the past. Now, you mentioned the PFMA. Of course, the stipulation there is 45% within the first 4 months, and then not more than 10% of last year's budget per month thereafter. Of course, we're now in month 5, which means we're getting into the space where some government departments will need the money based on the whole year, not on a monthly basis. And if we extend this thing much further, there are departments that are doing important work that wouldn't be able to do that if we, as you say, kept going. So yes, we've lent on the PFMA provisions, but if we don't want a complete government shutdown by October or November, this is what we need to be doing right now. And from that perspective, this is not a terrible decision. As I say, we would have preferred for Simelane to go, and we expect her to go at some point. But for now, we need a functioning budget. I think South Africans are rooting for government employees to be able to do their jobs. And from that perspective, it's a fairly good trade.
This is a parliamentary and a legislative process. So when actually does National Treasury then start handing out the funds under this 2025-2026 budget?
As you say, they've already started handing out the funds subject to the PMFA provisions. As soon as the Appropriations Bill is approved, there's also a number of bills that have been approved to this point, for example, the Division of Revenue, and the combination of those allows Treasury to keep funding government departments from the National Revenue Fund. And so that will now give departments the certainty, especially where it relates to big infrastructure projects, to actually be able to tackle those, which you can't really fund on a monthly basis. It's once-off payments, and that is now able to happen after today.
Is there a danger that other parties would have seen the kinds of successes and the kinds of concessions that the DA has been able to draw out of this budget process in the future?
I hope that everybody is taking notice of the successes that the DA has been able to implement here and the concessions we've been able to extract. If your question is whether smaller parties in the GNU will now make their voice heard and not just be sycophants to the ANC, we certainly hope so. We certainly hope that when there's another VAT fight in the future or another tax raise fight in the future, that the DA wouldn't be fighting that fight on its own. In this case, the Freedom Front, of course, joined us, but all of the other GNU partners went as far as doing a press conference to defend the VAT increase. So yes, we hope they take notice, we hope they follow our lead, and we hope this GNU starts functioning as a coherent approach to try and oppose ANC dogmatic policy that doesn't serve South Africa.
The DA has also been accused, however, that it's not necessarily acting like a coalition partner, like a partner that is working towards the same thing. Even in our conversation, there's a kind of adversarial tone to it. How deep are these cracks, and what is being done to ensure that it doesn't actually unravel our current coalition government and the GNU?
It's a tricky question. We never want to embarrass the ANC or make them feel inferior in this arrangement. But as far as this coalition is headed towards chaos, we need to oppose it. The DA can't depart from its principles, and it can't depart from the idea of defending South Africans against sometimes a pernicious state. And so yes, you will at times hear noises that we are unhappy with policy directions that have led to economic stagnation. For 10 years we've had near 0% economic growth. And so as far as policies are leading to those outcomes, you will hear us making a noise. It might sometimes be uncomfortable, but the alternative is far worse, which is South Africans losing trust in their government and taking the law into their own hands. We need to stick to our principles. It's the only way to serve society, and it's the only way anyway that all of us can show up to work and feel like we're doing the right thing.
On a purely fiscal point of view, from a purely fiscal point of view, how is South Africa actually following the Division of Revenue Bill? You guys have been able to unpack exactly what each of the departments are going to get, how they're going to be spending that money. But how are you guys filling the gap left by the proposed VAT hikes? Because there was a gap that was always discussed, but then also to in getting more money to try and consolidate the debt, to increase the debt repayments that South Africa has.
At the risk of sounding even more adversarial to the ANC in our conversation, the fact is there was never a gap. The budget now being proposed, if you inflation adjust the Mandela budget at their disposal, it's 3 times that budget amount, and it's twice what Mbeki's government had at its disposal. So there's no gap. It's an ANC lie that we don't have enough money coming in. The fact is we've got too much money going out to inefficient and corrupt programs. So to answer your question in this way then, we have insisted on a comprehensive expenditure review that finds inefficiencies within the budget and reallocates those funds to critical social and infrastructure-related expenditure. So we need to find those efficiencies. We need to have serious conversations about things like the CETAs, which are deeply corrupt, maladministered, broken, and the subject of multiple SIU investigations. And if we start getting serious about addressing those inefficiencies, we simply wouldn't be talking about a revenue problem. So your question is also the so-called gap. Well, the fact is, when we insisted that VAT can't increase and we weren't going to bring in 60 billion rand and after that 15 billion rand, Treasury was in fact able to adjust provisional allocations and over time unlock these efficiencies to reallocate funds to those provisional allocations. And this is exactly what a responsible Treasury should be doing if given the political permission to do so, which has been severely lacking for the last 31 years.
Dr. Mark Burke is the DA's finance spokesperson. Thank you very much for chatting to Newzroom Afrika. So the vote on the appropriations bill is going to be taking place here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre, getting underway at 10 o'clock this morning, Iman. And we'll keep our viewers up to date on everything that happens there, as well as the debate, some of the comments that are going to be coming out from that right here on Newzroom Afrika.
Then, Curtly, and it's a big one, so we will be watching that one closely as